fascinating rhythm. It's wonderful, long ago and far away. Isn't it a pity? Shall we dance? How long has this been going on?
Rashad V Chambers is the founder and president of Esquire Entertainment. Rashad is a Tony Award nominated producer, currently represented on Broadway with Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. His other notable credits include American Son on Broadway and It Happened in Key West in London. Rashad's first feature film, True to the Heart, won 4 awards at the Long Island International Film Expo and was an official selection at the Big Apple Film Festival. In addition, his short film Click was an official selection at the Hollywood Black Film Festival and the Pan-African Film Festival. Rashad attended Morehouse College, where he graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration. He also earned his JD and MBA degrees from the Ohio State University. He's a licensed attorney in New York and Connecticut. With no further ado, I welcome my good friend, all the way from New York City, Rashad V Chambers. How are you, my good friend?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh man, I'm better now, man. I get to see you in New York, and you have that beautiful, like I said before, you have the perfect combination of a V-neck sweater and a brown fedora for those who are listening, and the ribbon to match the fedora. That's a guy who takes pride in his haberdashery.
I guess, sir. Yes, and thank you for having me today.
It's great.
So great to see you.
It's good to see you. How you been during these quarantine times in New York City? What's the vibe like?
You know, I am very fortunate to be safe and healthy. New York has gone through a rocky few months, but we're back on top now, and just looking forward to the future and having everything reopen very soon.
Yeah. They said some restaurants are opening up a little bit. Is that correct?
That's correct. They've been open for outdoor seating for a few months, and they just started indoor dining with 25% capacity about 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
So it's getting a little better.
Well, that's good. I mean, with the winter coming, you want to at least be able to dine in a little bit.
Yes, and hopefully they'll keep increasing as the weeks go on.
Yeah. You and I have some history. We have some history. We go back quite some ways. We won't date ourselves, but we have a mutual friend, and that's why I kind of harped. If you noticed, I paused and I gave an accent to the Ohio State.
Yes.
I'm born and raised in Cleveland, and we met in New York some years back through a mutual friend of ours, Kristen Reeves. And I pretty much grew up with Kristen. Her brother Brian and I went to school together for many, many, many years. So when we would have our hangs, our play dates, whatever you want to call it, as young men, Kristen was always around, and she was her family. I have to say, the Reeves, her mother, her father, Eric, her brother. They are just an incredible family, and they always made such good impressions on me and the circle of friends we hung out with. So I knew that when we met in New York, because you were a friend of Kristen is a friend of mine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. We won't say the actual amount of time, but it's been a long time.
It's been a minute.
Yes.
It's been a minute. But at that time, I always remember when I met you, you had a presence about yourself. And at that time, you correct me if I'm wrong, you were in law school, finishing up law school. Is that what was?
I had just finished law school. I was about a year. It was about a year after school ended, and I was just kind of starting my career in New York. I was, had just passed the bar exam, was working in a legal capacity, but also was starting my own company at the same time.
Mm,
So it was, the beginning of the journey pretty much.
yeah, yeah. Well, you went to Morehouse, and that must have had a huge impact on your life. Let's go back a little further. Where were you born and raised?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, PA, so
I
not too far from you in Cleveland.
I didn't even know you. I didn't know you were from Pittsburgh.
My whole family, born and raised. My parents are from Pittsburgh. My grandparents are from Pittsburgh. So a lot of my family on both sides are still there.
Well, my grandmother lived in a town called New Kensington.
Okay, yes, I'm familiar.
Not a lot going on in New Ken, as you know.
Not anymore.
Oh man. Pittsburgh people are just like Cleveland people. We're down to earth, Midwestern folks, so that makes a lot of sense. Were you always interested in the arts on some level? And when you went to law school, did you have this in mind? Early on, or when did it start? When did it start for you? Your interest in the performing arts?
I can say I was interested pretty early on. One of my dear cousins, Maria, went to college for musical theater. She went to Point Park University in Pittsburgh. And that was when I was introduced to theater because my family is very big and we would go to all of her shows. And I loved it. I didn't want to be a performer, but I knew I wanted to be involved in performing in some way.
Mm,
So Pittsburgh has a very vibrant art scene with
yes.
two major universities there, with emphasis in theater as well as just a lot of theaters in the community.
Hmm.
So I was exposed to theater from a very young age and was kind of bitten by the bug. Um, as I was going to college, I knew that I wanted to sort of be involved in the arts in some capacity, but at that time didn't really know what you can do in the arts besides being an actor. And
Mm,
from the time I was 13, I wanted to be a lawyer. So I had this creative side to me, but I also had this sort of, other side of my brain that I wanted to use. So I went to college. I was a business major and I was studying performing and just kind of theater and history and all of those things. And then as I got into law school, I really started working on ways to put it all together. And that's
mm,
really where my producing aspirations started to take flight because I prayed for a career that would allow me to infuse law, business, and entertainment together. And sort of
yeah.
that's how I ultimately decided to move to New York to start pursuing that aspect of my career.
Oh man, that's amazing. So when you got to New York, you were working in law, sort of getting your feet wet in the business. You started a management firm. I love the name Esquire Entertainment. You got to tell me how you came up with
Thank,
that name.
thank you. So when I first started, I was working a little legal stuff, and then I was working as a rights and clearances director for a production company
Mm,
while starting my own company. And my initial plan was just really to be lawyer by day, producer by night. I
mm,
wanted to be engrossed in the world, but really just take the time to study and learn. But the big man upstairs had a different plan for me, so I wasn't. I still am a lawyer, but I wasn't a practicing lawyer for a long time
hmm.
because then I started talent management and kind of got into producing at the same time. I initially started with another company and worked with another partner for about 4 years.
Hmm.
And then in 2010, I decided that I wanted to go out on my own. And that's where I started Esquire Entertainment. And I came up with the name because, being a lawyer was always so important to me from the
Hmm.
time I was 13, as I mentioned. But I always wanted to work in the arts. And so when I was starting my own company, I came up with the name Esquire as a sort of homage to my legal training and my background because I always felt that it differentiated me a bit from other people who work in the arts. Working in theater or TV and film, you don't necessarily need a college degree
Mm,
to thrive.
mm,
It's the one great thing about the industry. If you're talented, if you work hard, you can make it. But I always felt because of my business background and my law background, I was able to approach situations in a different way, think outside the box, and really just communicate in a different way than others. So Esquire Entertainment was sort of an homage to that background.
Hmm. Well, it doesn't help. There's also an Esquire magazine, so there's some brand recognition in terms of
Sure,
refinement.
I have no problem being affiliated with that at all.
That's good. It's so awesome to see you being a lawyer, uh, being a black man with a legal background in entertainment. Because, being in the business, there's a lot of paperwork that's dealt with. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you have heard this for 100 years about the stories of people, particularly our people, in entertainment, who have done horrible deals, mainly because that person did not read the contract.
Mhm.
And did the history of these occurrences play a little bit into why you wanted to fill that gap in some ways?
Well, not necessarily, but it definitely helps now that I'm in the business. I think when I started out, I didn't really know a lot of that history.
Mm.
I really was just fascinated with law and business together. But as I started to learn more and more about entertainment, I was happy that I took that path because I'm just able to sort of understand and read and process all of these things in a different way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely beneficial.
Mm-hmm. How important was Morehouse for you?
It was pretty life changing. Just the history and the legacy and the nurturing that went along with the education of black men.
Mm.
We hear so much in society, the statistics about, black men either dying or being in jail.
Mm.
And the one thing about Morehouse is that they made sure that we knew that we were valued and that they were sowing into us so that we can go out into the world and do great things.
Mm.
And, when you have prestigious alumni that you can look to, like Martin Luther King Jr. and Spike Lee and Sam Jackson and mayors and ambassadors and all these other prolific people, you can't help but be inspired. So
Mm.
for me, it was the perfect place for me to go. The college only had about 3,000 students.
Mm.
So it was small but mighty.
Mm.
And I really can't imagine what my life would be like had I not gone there.
That's incredible. Is the network there still pretty tight for you post college?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And that is the one sort of great thing about the legacy
Yeah.
is that, 9 times out of 10, I can reach out to someone who I saw that went to Morehouse and I will immediately get a response. It could be, they don't know me. I could say, can I pick your brain? Can we talk? Can we meet for coffee? And it's an automatic yes. And that is rare.
That is rare. I mean, that's just rare just in life,
Mm-hmm.
and the bar is set so high at Morehouse and Spelman,
Right.
they expect excellence.
For sure.
The
They
whole
demand
community, they demand it. That's even more apropos.
Yes.
They demand it. Wow. So, talent management for you, why is that? Why was that something that you gravitated to? You wanted to be in the business. You saw that there was something in you that had an affinity toward the business. And, there's a lot of different areas of the business that you could have gone into. For example, you could have gone the Hollywood route where you worked in studio. Uh, with that background, you really pretty much the world was your oyster on the business side. Um, why talent management?
Honestly, it just fell into my lap. I moved to New York primarily because I wanted to produce on Broadway. And, around that time, I just met somebody that I really hit it off with who was building up his own company. And it just seemed like a natural fit. And I had a lot of transferable skills that just allowed me to do it
Mm,
because I had studied entertainment for so long.
mm,
And so when I would see casting notices for, a West Side Story or a Law and Order, I could kind of visualize like what clients I had and who was right for what project without really thinking much about it.
mhm,
And I don't know, it just seemed like a good fit for me. And I was able to do that and produce simultaneously. And it's been such a rewarding experience because I get to work with so many amazing creative artists who are passionate and they hustle and they teach me different things every day.
mm,
So it's I didn't really see that on my crystal ball,
mm,
but it ended up being the right thing for me.
mhm. And did you look at the agent route as well, uh, or talent management was just that's just where the opportunity was, so you just jumped in that lane? Because some people, a lot of with the legal backgrounds, they pursue the agency route.
hmm I didn't actually. Once I got a little accustomed to the talent management route, it seemed like the better fit for me
Yeah,
because I really value autonomy,
yeah,
and I was
freedom.
able to do
Yeah,
it sort of on my own schedule and in my my own way.
yeah.
So that is why I pursued that route instead of going for an agency.
Hmm. What do you think makes a good talent manager? Being one yourself, because man, it's a nuanced thing to
Mhm.
manage talent. I've talked to several talent managers. I've had some, in the past, and not everybody's cut out for that because you
You're
really tell me. Yeah, you're about to say, because I know you got an answer for this.
Yes. Well, it's funny. I just did an interview recently for Playbill.com, and I believe the three things I said were communication, patience, and empathy. I can go on and on, but I love those three because one thing that I've learned is that you have to engage each artist as an individual.
Mm,
And how I talk to you, Elijah, is not how I could talk to Jacques or Kristen or whatever. Like you really have to tailor that experience depending on where that person is in their
mm,
life and on their journey.
yeah.
So just learning how to talk to someone, learning how to give them feedback, learning how to listen,
Mm,
when somebody just needs a shoulder or objective feedback.
mm,
Patience, because it is a marathon, not a sprint.
mm,
It's a very competitive industry. People like to say that actors are a dime a dozen. I don't like to use that expression because I feel like everyone is unique in their own way.
mm,
But you may work with an artist who you really believe in, who is supremely talented, but it may take them a year or two or three to hit, to
mm,
really start working, to really start building a reputation. So if you believe in that person, you really have to be patient when they're working and when they're not working.
mhm,
And then empathy is really, really being able to relate, really being able to get out of your own way to
mhm,
see how things are from somebody else's perspective. This is a very vulnerable industry.
mhm,
And, my hat goes off to people who sign up for this because it's not easy.
mm.
There are so many factors that prevent people from getting jobs that are out of your control. You can go in
Yeah.
there and turn it out, have the best voice, have the best acting, have the best dance. And they're like, you know what? We actually just needed somebody who was blonde instead of brunette. Or we needed somebody who was 5'10" instead of 5'8" to fit this costume. And that is maddening, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So, being able to give hard information or hard feedback,
Yeah.
um, it takes a lot of empathy to be able to do that in a way that's not going to kill dreams. So those are three of many things. But being a talent manager, most people don't even know what we do. It's the difference between that and an agent, although there's a lot of overlap, is that talent management tends to focus more on strategic planning, career guidance, helping people pick projects, helping people identify their brand or their type. So, I mean, I have literally done everything from being the manager, the intern, the gopher, the assistant, the stylist. Like, I've had to do everything and wear so many hats for clients that it just kind of goes with the territory. So, but I believe if you have those three values, like, I think you can really do well at talent management, because it really is a very personal, intimate relationship that you have with your clients.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because you're all of that. You're also a mentor in some ways,
Hmm.
because it's a close partnership, and
Very close.
and I like the fact that you differentiate that role versus the agent role. There is some overlap, like you said, but agents really are their job. For those who are not who are listening or watching and are not in the business, the agent is pretty much responsible for submitting the talent for work, submitting the talent for the particular job, even though you may do that as well. And you have to have a rapport with the agent, right?
That is correct. That is correct. A lot of times the agents are just about submitting and pitching, and it's really financially motivated.
Mm-hmm.
Managers, if they're good, should be really working on the long-term goals.
Mm.
And a lot of it has to do with where they are in their career transitions. Because I work in New York, I end up getting a lot of clients that work in theater, because
Mm-hmm.
we're a theater town, and that's where people make their money. But for the ones who are like, but I also want to do TV and film, we work a lot on what that transition is like.
Mm.
How do you get the training? Because it's a different muscle that you're using
Mm-hmm.
doing live theater versus being on set, and identifying what type of roles you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of conversations about type, technique.
Mm-hmm.
When you go into a theater audition, you can hold that paper and you can look down. When you're working on camera, they want that to be memorized as much as possible, because so much of it is about your eyes. And they
Mm-hmm.
want to see how you emote. They want to see how you deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who's coming straight from Broadway, who doesn't have a lot of film or TV classwork, they may not know that. So that's a big part of the conversation, is understanding just how to do things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really crucial for those interested in the film television medium. I had Richard Lyons, Queen Latifah's acting coach, on, and I asked him. I said, Richard, what is the biggest mistake that film and television actors make in the audition process? And he was like, the biggest thing actors don't do is they're not off book. He was like, they're not off book. He's like, they haven't done the work to come in off book so that they can nail that audition, because it's a different
Hmm.
medium. And he goes, and that's a part of the work, to just have your lines down pat as much as you
Yes.
possibly can, just have those lines down. And and so that was great feedback.
Absolutely, because it's a skill, and it's not just about talent. You not only need to be able to deliver,
Hmm.
but you need to be able to deliver again, again, and again.
Yeah.
If you leave everything on the table on the first take, and something goes wrong, the lighting's not there, the sound is off, and you have to do it again, and you can't, then you're useless. So it's really about building up that muscle. So it's a lot to do, and people think that acting is just memorizing lines and then saying those lines. It is not. It is not for the weak or faint of heart.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, and I can attest to that. Brad Wilson, a great producer, friend of mine. He says something that you'll resonate with. For example, with the point you just made, with stamina and being able to maintain, your character's disposition during these long days, right? I mean, sometimes you get to
Yes.
set, right, and you're in your trailer for hours before they call you, and you have to be fresh. And sometimes they give you your sides that morning, which are not necessarily the sides you memorized to get the job.
Hmm.
So it's kind
Right.
of like
Because of rewrites,
because of
you know?
rewrites. Yeah, because of and he said he'll see sometimes young actors, and when I shot a film with him, he said, just make sure you don't blow the emotion on the other actor's POV. Meaning, when you have so that when it's time for your close up, the emotion that you needed to have is gone because you gave all, you got to give it to the other actor if you're in a dual
Right.
scene. But if you have that close up coming and all the tears or the emotion has you spent on the other person's close up,
Right.
you
Right.
when it comes to
It's true.
yeah, right. So that's
You have to know. You have
yeah,
to know. And this business moves very fast.
yeah,
About a year ago, I had a client audition for a new TV series on a Wednesday at around 12.
yeah,
At 6:30, they wrote me to say he's on hold for the project.
right.
At 6:50, they reached out again to say, okay, he booked it, and he was on set the next morning.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and he's
So
got to be ready
the
to go.
scrambling, yes. I mean, they had to get him costumes and everything in 12 hours.
Yeah,
So, and he had to be ready. So that's just how it is.
yeah, and the thing about TV that people don't maybe understand too is that when you're a guest star, guest star recurring, uh, even if you're a series regular, these TV shows move quickly. Now, if you're on a cable show, Netflix show, it's maybe a little slower than and in film, even a little slower than that. But a lot of times in television, man, when you are a guest star, you need to hit your lines the first time. Like you don't want to be that guy or that gal who is holding up the series regular for your guest
Right.
star line or your guest star paragraph. It's a lot of pressure. And when I did Masters of
Hmm.
Sex, I got to tell you, I didn't have a lot of lines, but I was in like 3 or 4 episodes, and the lines that I had, I remember just and I thrive in pressure situations, but I thought to myself, man, you have to, if you're not used to that, you have to become so comfortable in this pressure cooker situation because you have the crew looking at you, especially if you're like a newbie on the scene. They're literally
Right.
watching to see if you have the temperament to deliver and your lines and in character. So if anything, the director's coming back and he's giving you an adjustment, but it's not an adjustment like you got to say this,
Right. Yes.
or the script doctor calling you out because you didn't hit the lines, and it's and that's what you said. It's a skill. That's a skill.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad we got to talk about that a little bit. While you were doing talent management, you were cutting your teeth in the producer lane, and I am excited to talk about this because this aspect of what you do is even more ethereal. What does a producer do? I know producers. I know you, and I really don't even know what a producer does. I mean, I know in general context what a producer does on film, whether executive producing, raising money, line producing, managing the budget, managing things on set. But producing in theater, as much theater as I have done in my lifetime, when it comes to Broadway shows, I still don't really understand how that game works. So if you can kind
Hmm.
of take us through, a show comes to you, that uh, you're passionate about, or you see a show off Broadway, or you see a show in a regional market, because a lot of people don't even know that aspect of shows that come from some of the big regional markets that end up on Broadway. So let's just take a beginning of a new project that's sort of in development, maybe has teeth, and where you would intersect yourself and how that evolution might happen.
Okay, let me think of a good example. It can really start in development.
Mm.
It can start before you even get to a full production of the show.
It could be
But I'll
script.
use the example. It could, yeah, you could literally just, somebody finishes a project and says, I'm looking for a producer. Will you do this? In that sense, there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot more development because you may be responsible for helping them attach a director, helping them find a theater, in addition to raising money and putting the whole group together. So, like when I did It Happened in Key West in London,
Hmm.
I was one of two lead producers for the project.
Hmm.
And I had been working on the show for almost 2 years at that point. So we did everything from going to London, scouting out theaters, hiring all of the personnel, hiring the cast, working on the budgets, hiring the press team, the marketing team, in addition to raising money. So
Hmm.
you're almost like a CEO or project manager
Hmm.
for the production,
Got
and
it.
you're doing everything. Um, as compared to something like American Son that had already been developed and was basically just coming to Broadway. When I was invited to be a co-producer on that project,
Hmm.
my main responsibility was to raise money.
Hmm. Okay.
So on Broadway, you have your lead producers, which you can have up to four of those. And
Hmm.
those are the ones who are making all the decisions and hiring everyone. And then under the lead producers are co-producers
Mm.
who are responsible for raising money.
Mm. Okay. And how do you decide? Like, what are some of the things that you look for in a project that gets you excited?
Excited. It's a couple of different things that makes me excited about a potential project. One is the subject matter.
Hmm.
Two is who's involved with the show.
Hmm.
And three is the potential commercial viability of the project. Do I think it can make money?
Hmm.
So when I was offered American Son, I was really excited about it because I loved the play. I thought it was very timely. I loved the subject matter. And then I was equally excited by the fact that Kerry Washington was starring in it,
Hmm.
and she was just coming off of 7 years on Scandal.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was, going to be a very um, talked about project. And
Mm.
then I thought, okay, because of those two things, I think it has a really great shot of making money. And then, I quickly after, soon after I joined the team, I learned that Shonda Rhimes was coming on board as a co-producer, Jada Pinkett Smith, Gabrielle Union, Dwayne Wade. So it was just a really amazing first show for Broadway,
Hmm. Yeah, that's
for
huge,
my
huge.
Broadway debut.
Yes, huge, huge, great show, and great for you. When these people come on as co-producers, are they bringing money? Are they being like bringing influence? What are they bringing in that capacity?
Both.
Hmm.
It's a combination of both money and sort of notoriety slash influence.
Okay. The margins are not that great in theater, and that's another reason why I give it to you, because that is not an easy game to play and to be successful. Uh, what are the typical margins on a Broadway show, and why is it so important for a Broadway show to hit in a particular time frame? Because if it doesn't, it starts to hemorrhage money. If it does, then it can go and make more money touring. So explain that a little bit.
Only about 20% of shows on Broadway are successful.
That's
And
not
by
good.
successful, that's breaking even and making $1. So no, it's not good. But I think people do it for the love of theater and for the possibility that it can make it, that
Right.
you do stumble upon the next Hamilton or
Right.
Wicked or Jersey Boys or one of those long running shows. But you have to do it first and foremost because you love theater,
Mm-hmm.
but you're looking at the potential of the show.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't very important to figure out not only the time frame in which to open, but being in the right theater.
Mm.
Because if you're in a theater that's too big for your show, you won't be able to sell the tickets and you won't be able to make your weekly running costs.
Mm.
So there's a lot of analysis that goes into the timing of when a show should open.
Mm-hmm.
And that also includes what theater you're going to be in. And then from there, it just comes down to a lot of factors. Like, are people interested in that subject matter? Just because you have a star doesn't mean that people are going to come see it if they're not interested in the topic. But every once in a while, you'll just find that right synergy
Mm-hmm.
between the word of mouth or the subject matter or the right star. And then it'll just sell like hotcakes and you'll do well and you'll make money for your investors. And then if it's a new show, having that New York / Broadway cachet
Mm-hmm.
will then enhance the likelihood of it being licensed
Mm-hmm.
and being done by various theaters around the country. So then the Broadway producers and investors can make money, very similar to residuals for TV and film.
Mm-hmm.
We call them subsidiary rights in theater.
Mm-hmm.
For a good, the average is about 10 years. So if I did a show in 2019 and then it was licensed and then theaters in LA, Chicago, Atlanta started doing it, then I would have a piece of that pie for the next 10 years.
Mm. So what happens after the 10 years?
Usually the sort of all of the sub rights revert back to the author and then they just get their money for writing it. But yeah, usually the producers and investors just get 10. But it's also negotiable. So, and it depends on each show. So some shows may be 10, some shows may be 15, some may be, 18. It varies.
So like when Hamilton hit the road, those investors did well because that was a hit show, and it's still making
They
money.
are doing quite well between Broadway and tours and London and Disney Plus movie and all of those things. So yeah, that is a great example of a show that did well.
Yeah. Well, you had this Temptation show, and it was on Broadway before COVID hit, and got.
That's correct.
Right. So, is this considered force majeure? Did I say that right?
Force majeure.
Force majeure. Yeah.
Force majeure. Yeah.
Is this a force majeure situation? Kinda, sorta.
Kind of, sort of. I mean,
tell people what that means, because people don't know what that is.
Force majeure is basically a clause in every contract that essentially says if there is an act of God, could be flood, it could be lightning, it could be hurricane, that it's sort of a way to either get out of the contract or help you remedy the effects of that accident, so that the producer or whomever is not completely on the hook. It is a version of that because this is very unprecedented, so I don't think anybody could have anticipated it. So there have been a lot of discussions between producers and insurance companies to figure out how to manage this process, and it's taken a lot of communication, not only between those two entities, but also the theater owners, to figure out when theater can come back. How can we keep these shows afloat, in this downtime? Because if producers were just having to still pay rent and not getting any money, I don't think that any show would come back. So it's been a tricky situation, but from my understanding, they are all working together to figure out how to keep shows afloat and for shows to be able to come back when theaters reopen.
Speaking of rent, the Broadway rent is no joke.
Correct.
I think if you look at the chain, they probably they get their money off the top, right? I mean, they get the first money in. The producers have to pay the theater owners their rental fee.
Yes, they have to pay the rent, and I also believe that most of the theater owners also get a royalty
They get a royalty. They get a piece of the
from
action.
weekly sales. Correct.
Wow. So those now, how many corporations are any of the theaters on Broadway owned uh, independently? Or are they all corporate owned at this point?
Um, I believe all corporate owned.
All corporate owned. Okay, so those companies are making some big money, and from their perspective, they don't care whether a show does well or not. This is the fee.
No, they care.
I mean, they want a hit because it's going to stay in their theater, and they don't have to be,
Yes.
they don't need another occupant. But that's very, very interesting to me because I have heard that there's some shows that want to be on Broadway. Because I know Matt Pollock, for example. You probably know Pollock. So I went to school with Matt. And great PR guy on Broadway, and maybe I'll have him on here. But it seems to me, from what I've heard from some producers, that you might have a great show, but you may not be able to find a theater for that show because there are other shows that are on Broadway that are taking up the space because there are only so many theaters on the Great White Way. So what do you do as a producer in that regard where you, for example, say you have a subject matter and it's hot right now, like you want to get that thing on Broadway, say next year, and there's a window, and if you don't get it on next year, you never know, the tide could turn and it's not so relevant and blah blah blah. How do you mitigate that aspect when scarcity is driving the demand?
A wing and a prayer. So much of it is out of your control. There are only 41 theaters.
That's crazy.
And there are many shows that run for a long time. So every season there may only be 10 or 15 theaters that sort of cycle different shows, because there are some shows that want to be open-ended, meaning they run until nobody wants to come anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some shows, mostly plays, that will be limited engagements. So like American Son was always planned for just 16 weeks. So the theater owners would know, like, when these 16 weeks are over, then we can rent it out to another theater. But I don't have an exact answer to your question, but it really just comes down to relationships. And it comes down to, the theater owners liking the ingredients of your piece. They're going to look at who wrote it. They're going to look at who's directing it. They're going to look at who's the lead producer of the show. And you can still have all of those ingredients, but inevitably there's going to be a waiting list for theaters. So you may have 3-4 shows vying to be in one theater, and they're going to pick the one that they think is going to be best for that time period. And you either try to get another theater or you have to wait till the next season.
You have to wait. Yeah, that's a tricky thing. A lot of what has made Broadway shows a hit or not is due to the critics, right? It's
a big part of it.
It's and in some ways, some would argue bigger than they would like it to be. Because we know there historically have been some incredible shows that a particular critic or two didn't like, and then the show kind of went away. How important is that now? The
It's
critics.
just as important now. It may be even more important now because shows are so expensive and the demand is so high for theaters. Um, it's extremely important, And now I've been a producer, the reviews come out that night. So you'll be at the opening night party, and then you will start to hear buzz of whether the reviews were good or not. Which I thankfully most of my shows have gotten great reviews, so it just kind of elevates the mood and it becomes even more celebratory. But I have been to a couple of shows with friends on their opening nights where the reviews were not so great, and it just kind of sucks the air out of the room. So it is very important. Every once in a while, you'll get a show like Wicked that got very mixed reviews out of town and on Broadway, but was able to find their audience, was able to really tap into that girl power message, and a lot of mothers wanted to bring their daughters and um, that type of demographic. So it didn't really matter,
Hmm.
but for the most part, it matters significantly.
Yeah, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of power,
And pressure,
and a lot of
it's a
pressure.
lot of power and pressure.
A lot of pressure.
No one sets out to create a mediocre show. Sometimes it just resonates with audiences more than others. And, you just do your best to create the best art that you can create. And you hope that that art and commerce meet so that
Hmm.
you can have not only a artistically fulfilling show, but also one that is going to make your investors money.
Hmm. Hmm. Because it's a business. It's the business. It's the business of show.
That is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, you know, this is a crazy time. This is a crazy time. There was a timeline that was put out. That timeline when Broadway would be coming back has been pushed. Uh, from your perspective, as transparent as you can possibly be, I know some of this is still a bit speculative, but when do you really think people are gonna feel comfortable sitting next to each other in a Broadway house? You and I know that a Broadway theater is tight. Those seats
Mhm.
are tight. I just saw the beautiful Tina Turner musical, which oh my geez, I mean, in my opinion, that's one of the best musicals that I've seen in a long time. Don Lewis, my friend, happened to be in that show, and I didn't even know till I looked at the playbill and said, "Oh my God, Don Lewis is playing the mother," and and I remember sitting in the balcony. We had great seats, but just kind of right there, and it's tight, man. I mean, you're
Mhm.
right there next to each other. There's no I don't know how you social distance in a situation like that. Maybe you can't be at capacity, but because of the margins with theater and Broadway in particular, meaning you need full houses to make money, right?
Correct. Mhm.
When do you think people are going to be down to sit next to each other in a Broadway house?
There's a lot that still needs to be figured out, but I don't anticipate it being before fall of 2021.
Hmm.
And it's all going to depend on how communication goes in
Hmm.
terms of, is there going to be a vaccine? Are people going to feel comfortable taking it? Um, the disease has I don't want to say change, but the information we've received has changed.
Mm.
In March it was surfaces but not airborne, and then quickly became that it was airborne. And so it just depends on what are we doing? Are we doing temperature checks when people walk in? Are we giving refunds if somebody is not feeling well? I've gone to the theater many times sick.
Hmm.
Maybe I had tickets for months and I had a little cold, or maybe my throat was a little scratchy and I wasn't sure if it was cold or allergies. Now you get one tiny symptom and you need to stay home.
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot of things to figure out. is there a vaccine? Are we making people wear masks during the show? And then also, how do we keep the actors and crew safe backstage? Because there's no way to social distance backstage.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody
Mm-hmm.
has to interact and talk and all those things. So I really don't know. I don't think that Broadway's going to be back open for another year, but
Yeah.
it's going to come down to communication, and it's going to come down to what sort of safety protocols we can put in place. I
Yeah.
think TV and film is doing a great job of that.
Yeah.
But writers can rewrite scenes to keep them small and things of that nature. But with Broadway, you're packing anywhere from 700 to almost 2,000 people in a theater 8 times a week. So it's very tricky. But I hope we can find a solution soon. I mean, there are so many people who are struggling right now because not only can they not earn a living, but they can't be creative. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that not only can we figure this out, on the government level, but on the state and city level.
Yeah.
I was a part of a project this summer called the Broadway Community Project,
Mm-hmm.
and it was created to shine a light on the impact that theater has, and particularly Broadway, has on the city of New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a 12 to $14 billion industry,
Mm-hmm.
and brings that amount of money to the city each year, because it's not only the people on stage, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the restaurants around in the area, it's the dry cleaners, it's the delivery men. All of these people and companies are impacted by Broadway being open.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can figure it out, because a lot of people are counting on Broadway reopening.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Uh, do you think that this transition is also helping to engender more diversity in theater? I mean, you have been a part of some shows that are greatly diverse. I mean, ain't too proud. The story. The Life and Times of the Temptations is a black show. The Tina Turner show is primarily black cast. In the regional theater market, you don't see a lot of black shows, except for Black History Month. You, they're all over the place in February.
Well, there are some classics that are done regularly,
Yeah,
but I
here and
understand
there,
what you're saying.
here and there, here and there.
Yes,
Not a lot of black artistic directors in the
that's
regional
correct.
house. And in my opinion, the regional house is the theater market primarily. Broadway is an institution and this does its thing, but the Broadway world can exist because there's people around the country, around the globe, who are exposed to theater. So that
Right.
regional market, and also it feeds the aspirations of a young, people of color to pursue a career in the performing arts. And when you see people on the stage that look like you, it's possible to see
Right.
yourself on a New York stage, for example. What do you think this is doing? I have heard conversations are being had around this subject, and are those conversations that you're having, and is that exciting for you regarding the future of theater and Broadway?
Yes, it is very exciting. Unfortunately, I'm one of a handful of black producers on Broadway. And
I know.
so I've been
And,
trying to use my voice to educate and
hmm
to help open doors for other people, because I do believe representation matters. And there are a lot of creators and there's a lot of people who don't know how to gain that access.
hmm
But I think with the combination of COVID and George Floyd passing,
hmm
I should say being murdered, there's been a lot of conversations about systemic racism and systemic biases in theater.
hmm
And so, because of that, there have been a lot of conversations. There's been a lot of new organizations that have been created
hmm
to diminish or alleviate these biases. And there have also been a lot of new people of color being hired by organizations, whether it be off Broadway or regional theaters, that hopefully will help alleviate this problem. So I'm just excited about the possibilities, and I'm hoping that we can all continue to communicate, not only to create more opportunities, but also to figure out how to communicate and work together with our allies. Because it's not going to happen by us just being angry and talking at people as opposed to people, but figuring out how we can all work together. You can't just have great theater with all white people, just like you can't have great theater with all black people.
That's right.
Or Latin people. We have to all come together and work together. And I think that that's what makes theater so magical, is that, those things exist, those biases exist, but on the grand scheme of things, most people put that aside because, theater tends to be a lot of outcasts or rejects or people who didn't feel like they fit in anyway. So you're all coming together to create art. But I think these conversations over the last 4 or 5 months have been really great for our community, and I'm hoping that they will continue to flourish so that we can see, triple the amount of producers of color in the next couple of years, and we can see more shows with people of color on Broadway and around the country, and also just nurturing people in every department. When I first went to the workshop of Ain't Too Proud, the reason why I wanted to be a producer on that show is not only did I see beautiful and talented people of color on stage, but I saw a black female book writer. I saw a Latin choreographer. I saw a black orchestrator. I saw a black music director. And there were already black producers attached to it. So I saw all of that, and that made me so excited that I said I have to be a part of this. And I want people of color who want to be stage managers or casting directors or set designers. I want them to feel that same inspiration and empowerment to do what they love to do and what they were born to do. And so that's where I am hoping we go with this movement.
That was such an eloquent answer to a very complex question, and you answered that beautifully. And I hope to be a part of that number one of these days. I got a feeling that you and I are going to do some kind of business together, and it's probably going to be some business we know, which is the arts.
Yes, indeed. Anytime.
I would love to. I would love to do that, and because I've been so closely, in conversation and relationships with people on the other side, and it's been an evolution. With me producing short film and producing music and producing this podcast, this vidcast, and I think it's just the inevitable evolution that I'll do that, and it's exciting for me. It really is exciting for me to see you do the work that you do, and the way in which you do the work, which is exceptionally well. You have an incredible reputation in the business, and people like you. I've and I say that from the very beginning of when we met. There's a silver lining with this technology. I don't know if you know that SAG has been very sort of encouraging or ahead of the ball in some ways regarding theaters being able to film and broadcast. For some reason, Equity maybe didn't beat them to the punch, but is that helpful right now from your perspective?
It's extremely helpful. People don't have a way of making a living.
Yeah.
It's made jobs even more competitive. TV and film is starting again, thankfully. But for people who do theater, they don't have a way of making a living right now. And I'm hoping that Equity really steps up to the plate and tries to make this happen. I don't know all the ins and outs of the conversation, so I don't want to judge or speak on something that I don't have
Hmm.
specific knowledge about. But just what I've heard from talking to some of my peers who run theaters,
Hmm.
they have not had the communication that they would like. They
Hmm.
have not had the the guidance that they would like. From my actor friends, they feel a little lost
Hmm.
because they don't feel like they can make a living. And SAG has been on it. SAG has really done a great job so far of figuring out these new contracts and
Hmm.
and how to do that. And if we can't physically be inside a theater, but we still want to bring theater to people around the country and around the world, then we should be able to do that. And as
Hmm.
long as actors are able to make a living, we shouldn't be splitting hairs about whose insurance is being paid into.
Hmm.
Like people need to work.
Hmm.
No one that I know of can live off of unemployment, which is $500 a week in New York. So
Hmm.
I'm extremely happy that the conversation is happening, and I'm hoping that more and more producers and writers will have an opportunity to be able to create work on this sort of new streaming model, because
Hmm.
it's going to be the one way to get sustainability for actors until we can have live theater again.
I am so glad you said that. I believe that is so true. We got it for now, and maybe in the future there'll be this sort of hybrid of virtual and live together. I kind of think that's just going to be where things go.
Mhm.
My heart goes out for anyone who's listening to this and watching. My heart goes out to all of our friends in New York, also here in Vegas. There's a lot of people in Vegas who are not working because of
Right.
this crazy situation. So um, we want to be a part of the solution, and this time with you has been amazing. As we wrap up, what are you excited about? You got some projects percolating that you can speak on, or do you got to keep a pretty tight lip right now?
Um, I can tease a few things.
All right.
I'm really excited. I'm excited about being able to just create art in general.
Yeah.
Being very blessed to have done several Broadway shows. I'm now looking to start developing and producing television as well.
Get out of
I
here.
wrote, yeah, I
Because
wrote a
you have a
pilot with
film
one of my.
background.
I do. I have a
Yeah.
bit of that, and
Yeah.
I wrote a TV pilot last year with one of my friends slash clients, and we've been pitching that around. The musical I talked to you about earlier, called It Happened in Key West. We're looking to do the U.S. premiere of that whenever theaters can reopen in 2021 or 2022. And I've also been working on a new musical about Nina Simone
Get
that
out of
I
here.
would, yes, plan to
Oh my.
produce off
Oh.
Broadway.
Oh my gosh.
So that's
Oh.
been my baby during the pandemic, just trying to figure out the right theaters and things of that nature. But it's a new musical called Little Girl Blue, and it's very special. So that's sort of been my work during the pandemic. So I'm excited about all of those projects.
That's great. That's great. Well, keep me abreast. I'm so glad that you took my call.
Always.
You're a busy guy, and man, thank you for your time. It's been really a blessing. Where can people find you?
Let's see. Um,
You got that
Social media,
website.
Facebook.
That's right.
Yeah. So website, esquireentertainment.com. Instagram, Rashad V Chambers. Facebook, Rashad Chambers. I think that's it. I'm not
Yeah.
on Twitter or any of those other things, but I'm pretty accessible.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone who wants to chat, talk about art and theater, and I'm all ears.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you're getting involved in television as well and continuing in film as well. Um, yeah. There's some exciting projects. Actually, there's a project that I have a very exceptional actor is has a incredible script, you just never know what the what the future holds. And
You don't. You really don't. And it's all about relationships in this business, and um, great things happen when you're not even expecting it. So I'm so grateful that you reached out and that we were able to have this talk. And I hope that it inspires you know other people to want to be in this business and to do what we do and what we love to do, and that they see two African American men thriving, and
hmm
that's very important.
one last thing. What would you say to young aspiring people, whether they're actors, entertainers wanting to transition to more of the business side, people who want to enter into the business side from your like similar to how you did.
Hmm.
What would you say to them in terms of setting themselves up for success? Because this is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I hope people get from
Hmm.
this interview that there was a time frame from when you got to New York to pursue producing, along with talent management, to when it actually manifested itself.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that work
Absolutely.
obviously paid off. What few nuggets would you shed on those who are haven't made that first step, but it's something that they want to pursue.
Right. Yeah. And just to be even more specific, so I moved to New York in the fall of 2005. I started developing and producing smaller projects, readings, workshops in 2007.
Hmm
And I made my Broadway debut in 2018. So it was 11 years of studying and hustling and networking, all of those things. But I would say a couple of things: study your craft, know it inside and out,
Mm,
because when you have that knowledge, no one can deny you.
mm,
Whether it takes 1 year or 10 years, if you know what you're talking about and know what you're doing, you'll be undeniable. The second thing, which I think a lot of people forget, is use your resources.
mm,
You never know who is around you that may be able to help you with your goals. And
mm.
if they can't, they may know somebody else that can. The third thing is get out of your own way.
Mm, mm, mm,
So many times we put up these unnecessary roadblocks because of fear or self-doubt or you know any number of factors.
mhm.
And my perspective and what I always tell clients is you can't fail if you try.
Mm.
You will always
Amen.
learn. You will
Amen.
always experience something. But so many times people allow these gremlins from their past to get in their head and tell them that they can't do something.
Mhm.
So get out of your own way, go and try. Who cares if you don't get the gig right away? Who cares if somebody doesn't invite you to be a part of their writing fellowship? Just go.
Mm,
You shouldn't allow somebody else to give you permission to create art,
mm. Or to produce it.
to, or to produce it.
Yep.
Right. So those would be the three things that I think can help one really persevere in this business, because it's hard.
Mhm.
Every day you're hustling, you're fighting, and you're just trying to make a way. And in the beginning it seems impossible,
Mhm.
but you go to a show, you see people like you turn on the TV, you see people like you, so there's a glimmer of possibility. But when you're fighting to have a day job and you have three roommates, you just don't always know how you can do it.
Mhm.
But if you just keep those three things in your back pocket,
Mhm.
you just start chipping away at all of the hard things, and eventually you get closer and closer to your goal.
Mhm.
And that's the beauty of art,
That's right.
is that we can all do it. We can all do it in different ways. And that's not to say that you have to do it on Broadway. Broadway is the pinnacle of theater, but you can do this in LA, Atlanta. You could do it in other places and still be as equally fulfilled. But just do those 3 things to start with, and then you'll probably discover other things. But those are the things that I see sort of getting in people's way along the journey.
Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, Rashad V Chambers. This was like a masterclass. I mean, this was like a masterclass, man. And I already know that this interview is going to get a lot of listens and a lot of views because you are who you are and you speak from the heart. And you speak the truth, and there's so much information to uncover and to excavate in this hour that we spent with each other. But I hope to have you back in the future when as things continue to evolve, as I know they will. It's been my ultimate pleasure, Rashad V. Chambers.
Thank you, mine as well. Thank you, Elijah. It's been so great seeing you, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you, my friend.
How long has this been going on?
The Fine Art of Romance, A Bachelor's Handbook by Elijah Rock.
These handsome gentlemen are one of Las Vegas's finest new a cappella group, serving up a perfect blend of 1950s and 60s classics along with pop hits with a doo-wop twist. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friends, the Doo-Wop Kings. I was young, pop, and didn't know wake up and see what me. Na na na. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. So I thought do 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 so long. You don't know how much you mean to me. 'Cause even though times got rough, you never turned away. You're right there. And I thank you. When I felt I had enough, you never turned away. You're right there. And I thank you. Ba-da, 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 ooh. Da-da-da, da-da, da-da, da-da-da. Ba-da, doom, da-da. 'Cause even though times got rough, you never turn away. You're right there. And I thank you. When I felt I had enough, you never turned away. You're right there. And I thank you. Ba-da, ba-da, da-da-da, ooh. Da-da-da-da, da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da. Ba-da, doom, da-da, doom, da-da, ba-da, yada, 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 ya, 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 doom, da-da, doom, da-da, da-da, yada, 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 ya, 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 ya.